Hey everyone, welcome back to our second video in our week on conflict theory. In the first one, we introduced the concept, talked about the fact that instead of seeing society as an organism with different structures playing the role of organs that have different functions, we want to think about society as comprised of interest groups that are struggling to shape society in particular ways according to their interests. This week, or I'm sorry, in this video, what we want to talk about is how they go about doing that. So last week is sort of why we have conflict, and it's the idea that individuals want to shape society into in line with their particular interests. How do they do that? So there's a political scientist. He actually holds a chair in sociology now. His name is Stephen Lukes, and he wrote a book called, I believe it's called Power: A Radical View, in which he kind of put forward this theory that there are three dimensions of power, which is what we're going to talk about. Dimension one is overt power. Dimension two is mobilization of bias. And what you want to put in your notes for that is control of the agenda. And then third is cultural hegemony. What you want to think about there is control of beliefs. But we'll go through each of them one at a time. First one's the easiest one, the most intuitive. How does conflict happen? Well, it happens with different groups coming together and using their resources to actually have a battle to shape society the way they want it to. Overt power could take the crude form of violence. I mean, you can remake society in the way you want by shooting a bunch of people. But more often, especially in our society, the resources that are marshaled are things like money, the ability to argue, just mobilizing voters, so people as a resource. And all you're trying to do is in a democracy is trying to get enough votes so that you can shape society that you want it to be. Overt power is what you would normally think of, a battle among different groups. That's it for that. Mobilization of bias is, to me, a more interesting dimension in the sense that it has to do with what gets put on the agenda for discussion or for conflict and what is kept off the agenda for discussion or for conflict. In other words, conflict theory is about groups fighting, but they don't fight about everything. There are some things that are on the agenda that they battle about. In the year 2021, we're battling over things like whether critical race theory should be in education, whether abortion should be legal or how legal it should be. We aren't fighting about gun rights right now, but we almost certainly will fight about that again at some point. Those are all things that are on the agenda. The mobilization of bias is what happens behind the scenes. So we're talking about those three things, but there are a whole bunch of things that we aren't talking about, that aren't on the agenda. And Luke's used the term mobilization of bias to get at the idea that we as a population are biased to take some things as just for granted. Let me give you an example. So another one of the fights that we have right now, another one of the arenas for conflict among different competing interest groups, is healthcare. And there is the side that says we should get rid of Obamacare. There's the side that says we should expand Obamacare. And basically what this involves is whether or not there's going to be public money used to help people pay for their health care. That's what the debate is about. And that is happening in this realm of overt power. So people on each side are gathering money and trying to persuade voters to either overturn Obamacare or to strengthen it or expand it. But there are a whole bunch of options that are not even on the table with regard to healthcare. And this is where this idea of mobilization of bias comes in. So, for example, everything that I talked about in that debate is about how we are going to pay doctors or hospitals or clinics, right? That's the whole thing. Does government help out with that? Does government not help out with that? But that sort of that assumes that it is going to be acceptable in our society for healthcare to be run as a capitalist business, that private individuals will set up their own businesses, and that will be how we provide the healthcare. What we're fighting about in this overt power level is how you're going to pay for it. But the mobilization of bias has come before that, where we all assume that, well, yeah, of course, doctors and hospitals are going to be private businesses. That's something that isn't even a part of the debate. But we have models, and to be clear, this is not an argument for we should nationalize healthcare. This is just to point out that that's not part of the debate. We talk about, should we expand government's role in helping pay for healthcare? We don't talk about, should we expand government's role in providing healthcare? We have a nationalized healthcare service in America right now that is the VA. Doctors in that situation are not private businesses. They are government employees. That's the way all of England provides their health care. So there is no question about who's going to pay the bill for medical care in England. It's just paid for because it is a government service, the way public education or road maintenance is in America. The fact that we don't even consider that is an example of the mobilization of bias. There is a group that is keeping that issue off the agenda altogether. And again, to be clear, this isn't some covert argument for nationalized healthcare. This is just an acknowledgement that we don't talk about that because of this second dimension of power. Okay, third dimension of power is what is called cultural hegemony. And what that means is the power to shape desires and beliefs, and therefore avert conflict and grievances from coming up at all. So we could use this healthcare thing and talk about that not only is there a group that keeps that out of Congress and out of debate altogether, but there is this belief that a lot of people have in America that it would be that the belief that government doing healthcare would necessarily be bad. And if you believe that, that's fine. I'm not trying to change your mind about that. I don't want to change anybody's mind about anything. I just want to help you think through the way we think. That idea of government being in charge of things, that could be bad or it could be good. It's hard to know. The point I want to make is most Americans have the belief that government should not be involved in that, which is fine. That's fine. But it's important for us to understand that that's not a natural debate. That's not a natural belief that people have. In England, they have massive protests anytime any government official even suggests that maybe doctors should be more privatized like they are in America. You will have people carrying signs that say no American healthcare here. So the belief that we have may be right or may be wrong, like any belief. The point here is that it is a belief that most Americans have without even thinking about why they hold it. Okay, those are the three dimensions. You've got straight up battles. You've got the fact that some things are not even up to be battled. They don't even come up because they are kept off the agenda. And then third is the fact that the beliefs that we have and the desires we have are shaped by, in some cases, by powerful groups who want us thinking in certain ways. That's it for Stephen Lukes. What I want to do in our next video is focus a little bit more on this idea, cultural hegemony. There was an Italian sociologist in the 1920s named Antonio Gramsci who worked a lot on this idea of hegemony. And what he was interested in was really understanding how what looks like stability and order is actually domination, like any conflict theorist would say, but domination that is consensual, that the people who are being dominated believe they're being dominated is the right and natural way to be. He explored this a lot while he was in prison, imprisoned by Benito Mussolini's fascist regime. An interesting and really tragic story that I will talk about in the next video. I will see you guys then.